Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. And I know I say this every month, but it feels like we just keep rolling along. I can't believe it's the middle of June already. And a lot of people listening might be going, yeah, and we haven't really gotten summer quite yet. We've gotten some decent weather, but we've got like this streak of rain. And I know there is like heat in the forecast for next week and maybe even this weekend. So I'm sure things will improve. They'll get better because we like to be out there enjoying the outdoors. In fact, before I introduce my guest for this week, I am excited to share that I'm taking an online course on forest therapy. So I'm really excited about that. It's like a forest therapy certificate kind of thing. And, I'll admit I don't know too much about the organization hosting it, but I did look it up online and I saw some nice reviews. And here's my thing. I just want to learn more and be able to share that with people because I know how I feel when I do get outdoors, kayaking, looking at the birds and things like that. It feels great. And any kind of information like that I can share when I'm out and about and when I'm leading my laughter sessions and say, hey, here's another resource for you. When you get out there in the forest and enjoy, there is really something to what that does to our health and wellness. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited to share what I'm learning with you all. I just started 12 modules and I just finished the first one. So I'll be happy to share that. But we are going to talk about wellness today, things that can help us. And specifically, this podcast, I have it geared for women. That's why I like to feature a different woman each week. So I would like us to focus mostly on women. We can talk generally too, but we'll probably talk a little bit more about women's wellness. And we have someone today who knows a lot about that. And we'll get into her credentials and all that good stuff in just a moment. But let me introduce Lisa Rigau. And before we get started, I forgot one of my things that I like to do every week. I usually like to just say how I know a person because I just like to illustrate the importance of getting out there, connecting, having a nice network of people that you can, rely on, help one another. So that I'm really big on getting out and meeting other women, supporting other women, and networking in general with men and women. But I actually I think I had first met Lisa a little over a year ago when Megan Alpert at Joy World, and you've heard from Megan on my podcast a couple times, she likes to take a holistic approach to wealth. So she has had a lot of different wonderful events for women. And one of them was in the winter-ish time, maybe February, March, a couple of years ago. And she had a couple speakers who were great. And Lisa was one of those speakers that evening that I got to meet. And then I said, I want to have her on my podcast. Well, time went on. And I actually ran into Lisa again this past spring when both of us were leading sessions at a kind of a self-care wellness type of day for mental wellness that was at a local church. And so Lisa is out there, out and about, and she's well respected. A lot of people know her. And so I would like to officially now welcome Lisa Rigau as my guest this week. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks, Janine. I really appreciate that. It was a really nice intro, and thanks for all that you're doing for the community, really, to really lift up women. And it's so necessary. You touched on something that I'm really interested in too, which is we call it forest bathing in the world of lifestyle medicine, which is fantastic. So I'll be listening in the future podcast about that because very important to get outside. It's one of the keys to really connecting us to ourselves is to stay connected to nature.
Yeah, and I'm only one module in and I'm learning I guess forest bathing and forest therapy are kind of used interchangeably. And even though apparently that's not exactly correct, but I didn't know that. Like the forest bathing was, I guess, kind of more created partially for tourism and partially they had said in Japan, people were kind of getting away from it and they were becoming more urbanized. But I guess the forest therapy side, I only just started to delve into where they're talking about literally hugging trees. We've heard of tree huggers, right? But literally hugging trees and like the medicinal, the therapeutic benefits of like cedar and pine and balsam and all these different things. And I'm like, wow, I can't wait to dive in and learn more because I know and you know this, and I think everybody knows, well, when something feels good, right? So I know when I was running, I always felt better after a run, but when I would run like at the state park, it was another level. It was different because being among the trees and hearing things like branches crunch under my feet and I felt so much calmer when I was done. And even now, just looking at birds or going kayaking, I feel like I always say that's what saves me when I'm feeling stressed. It just brings me right back to a calm place.
Oh my gosh. And it's really interesting because everything intertwines. That's how I got into what I do. I teach mindfulness as, as one of the things that I do, as one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine, which is, the stress management piece of it. But particularly, stress management is a big umbrella. I just happen to be trained in mindfulness meditation. And the reality is that we can sense in our body when something feels right and feels at ease. And we can know that when, we're walking around with our shoulders around our ears, and as you take a deep breath and as you see the birds and the colors and feel the wind or the sun on the skin, our body is actually giving us information. So if we can get out of our heads, and being outside is it's a very actually quick way to do that. So if you're in an office all day long and there's no window, for example, our brains and our bodies don't really have any place to connect. It's very difficult unless you actively do something, stand up, move around, maybe jump up and down, go downstairs. But when you step outside, there's a reset. And that's a neurobiological reset for our bodies. So it's really cool that as you're describing that's a great quick way to bring down our stressors or stress hormones to kind of really put us at ease. Interestingly, it leads into our discussion today too, because stress and stress hormones play a big part of what shows up in perimenopause symptoms, particularly. And there's so many different ways to kind of meet that.
Yeah. And I know anyone who knows me knows that I must say the word. I should probably get $1 every time I say the word perimenopause. I don't know who would pay me, but I say it a lot. I say it a lot on my podcast. I mention it. I say it a lot when I'm on Instagram talking, and even in my stand-up comedy, because, it's where I'm at in life right now. And I've had my body change so much. And and for me, I'm feeling not in a good way, so it also has impacted my self-esteem, like how I feel, like weight gain, not feeling attractive, and different aches and pains. So I'm not loving this part of the journey where I'm at right now, but that's why I was excited to hear at least what what you've learned and what you can share. But before we jump into that, I just want to, because like I said, I had met you twice, and I know that you're a great professional and have wonderful information to share. But tell us, share with the listeners a little bit about you and kind of what led you into this field and why it's important to you.
Yeah, thanks. I will try to make it a synopsis because I've been around a little while. So, but my training, my undergraduate training is in nursing. So I was a nurse, I was a trauma nurse. Actually, was a high-risk labor and delivery nurse by specialty, but life and things took me into a different direction. So I was a trauma nurse in North Philadelphia, and I did that for a while in the step-down unit there. And then my husband and I ended up moving up to this area. So I'm originally from the Philadelphia area and came up here and made the decision to stay at home, raise my kids, and then go back to school. So I ended up getting my master's at Marywood in sports nutrition and exercise science. And I did that for quite a while and started a business at the same time. So I've had healthy lifestyle management as my business since 2003. So I've been in the community a long time. A lot of people weren't aware that I had the business in the community. And it was really around, I didn't want to go back into the hospital because what I saw was I was taking care of people and it was a Band-Aid. So I wanted to create a business where I was helping people and empowering them and educating them to take care of themselves. And this was way before the American College of Lifestyle Medicine even became a thing. There were studies being done, but it was way before that. So I sort of had it was kind of intuitive, I guess. Started that, and I make house calls. And I've been making house calls now since 2003. So I get referrals from local physicians, and I'll go in and work with people. But it's morphed over the years. So worked, and I teach at the University of Scranton, so I was the NCAA speaker for them for a while, and then started working one-on-one because I was being sought out by the team coaches to work with athletes who were having basically disordered eating and how to manage that in a setting that was nutritionally sound, but also for their emotional well-being as well. It wasn't my area of expertise, but I had training in it. And while I was doing that, I was introduced to mindful eating and mindful eating. So I got trained in mindful eating. I became a certified mindful eating teacher and then became a mentor of mindful eating. So teachers internationally regarding mindful eating. While I was doing that, so I got a postgraduate certificate in mindful eating and at UC San Diego. And then I wanted to go to the original base of that. What was mindfulness about? And then I got certified as a certified teacher in mindfulness-based stress reduction. So that's my other postgraduate certificate out of Brown University. So I started out at UMass, where John Kabat-Zinn created it, UMass Medical School, and then switched to Brown when it switched over. So I recognize that we as human beings early on are more than just the physical body, more than just the emotional and cognitive body, more than the spiritual body. We're a combination of many different things. I don't use the term holistic because in the healthcare setting, science is science, right? And so everybody wants research and things like that. And so holistic sometimes has a connotation when I'm working with other physicians in the community or other scientists. There's some pushback, but it is holistic. It's really a combined care of the entire human being. And so I just kept incorporating these pieces. And so I teach mindfulness meditation to the community on Saturday mornings, which is great. I teach the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, the 8-week intensive program, to the community. And I teach at the University of Scranton mindfulness meditation as well to the faculty, students, and staff. I do an online drop-in that anybody can come to, mindfulness meditation. So really it's, for well-being of all kinds, stress management, anxiety, depression, physical pain, emotional pain. Lifestyle changes like menopause, perimenopause stuff. And then I also do education, like I said, in the areas of nutrition, movement, sleep hygiene, and stress management, and purpose-driven life.
Well, you cover a lot. You cover a lot there, Lisa. I'm like, okay, before we go into all that, I do want, if you don't mind, I just want to ask you a question, just coming back to when you were doing the high risk, I think you nursed in high risk pregnancy and you were in North Philadelphia, you probably have seen some things. You've probably seen like a lot of trauma and stress. Were you feeling that? Were you taking that on? And then how were you doing something for yourself when you were living that life?
That's a great question. It's really funny. I was really, really young and I stepped out of high risk labor and delivery because that was my training at the University of Delaware when I was there, and walked right into trauma just because it was where the job that I got. And I worked on a gang unit. So
wow.
Police, were always on our floor. My patients were handcuffed to the bed a lot of the time, very young. And I was a young, white, privileged girl in an area where it was very urban. Most of the people I took care of were Black or Hispanic, and about my age, being shot or beat up or whatever, stabbed. A lot of head traumas. I loved my head traumas. The thing is, at that age, at 22, I thought I knew so much, and so stressors were coming at me and I wasn't really paying attention to them. So I was doing things I was taking care of my patients, but I didn't need to take care of myself. And that is very common when I'm working in the healthcare setting. I teach a lot of mindfulness and stress management to the local healthcare community, mostly at Lehigh Valley Health Network in Dixon City, because I'm an adjunct teacher for the Center for Mindfulness at Lehigh Valley, the main in Cedar Crest in Allentown. But healthcare professionals, and I say this with all due respect, I'm married to a physician. My son has just become a physician. He's a resident now.
Wow.
We have a tendency to say we're the healers and we're going to heal, rather than, we're taking on that much stress, and there is PTSD for all healthcare professionals because it's vicarious sometimes. So it's not happening to us. Sometimes we're witnessing it, and sometimes it's actually happening to us. The abuse of nurses right now is at an all-time high, verbal and physical. So, but as a young person, I wasn't doing anything to take care of myself except run around with my, big gulp of Coke because I didn't drink coffee. So I would be slurping that down and running all over the place. But yeah, as I aged, the more I know what I don't know. And so I've become more curious, and now I take care of myself in a completely different way.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because as you were starting to talk, I was thinking, when I was in my 20s, I feel like I didn't really come into my own until like mid to late 30s, like even I mean 40, and like I like who I am now these past several years, well minus the perimenopause crap, but I liked myself a lot in my mid to late 30s and 40s. But would you say, and maybe this is an over stretch or whatever you want to say, when a person is young, are they, because you're like almost oblivious to what it could be doing to you, is it that like you're not even absorbing that stress? Because I feel like where I'm at now, I feel more stressed on many occasions than ever. I feel often overwhelmed, like noises overwhelm me. I sit in my house and I'm like, God, this is a noisy world. Like, and sometimes it's just too much. I feel like I need to put on headphones. So I don't know, like maybe when we're younger, does it kind of bounce off like the Wonder Woman cuffs or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I just think that really that there's a lot of not paying attention. There's a lot of inattention to it. And so you're able to just kind of navigate almost like blindly. You're not really paying much attention. As we age, though, we pay a lot more attention, more aware, more aware, and I think more self-aware too, not just of the surroundings, but of ourselves. But as a younger person, I really believe that you're not you're not really paying close attention, although you are absorbing it, and there's a tipping point. You get to a point where there's a tipping point, and that all that we start to carry, because our physical body and our cells carry it. And I mean, I won't go down the rabbit hole of transgenerational trauma, but that exists. But our own, you carry it with you. And so some of the things that you experience and see might not initially affect you, but eventually it shows back up again. And that's why I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction. Most of the people that are in the class are 30s and above, but usually 40s to 80,
Mm.
because it starts to become too much. It's like there's that tipping point, and it's just too much, and it shows up in many different ways. The interesting thing, which was a personal thing, is that in perimenopause, depression and anxiety go up, and it becomes more evident, and so we start having symptoms around those two. And I don't necessarily mean clinical, although it can become clinical depression and clinically diagnosed as anxiety, but it's more that you're recognizing the symptoms, but you might not even know what to call it. A lot of people don't know what to call it, right? So they're just like, man, I'm anxious, or I'm having heart palpitations, or I'm having some chest pain, or I feel really blue brain fog. That is just brutal. And it's funny because I started getting more interested in it when I'm working with people, because I was going through it myself. As a healthcare professional, you think you're supposed to know a lot.
Mm.
And then when it happens to you, you're just like, whoa, what is happening? I actually thought, like, am I going crazy? And I don't mean that in a pejorative way, because I work in mental health quite a bit with stress management and mindfulness. But I really felt that way. And to try to navigate the healthcare system, again, a whole nother juggernaut that we're not going to talk about today, because I could talk about it like crazy.
Yeah, and I would chime in. I'm not loving it right now.
Yeah, it's got a lot of flaws. And, that's why I practice lifestyle medicine, and I always have, is because 80% of what we do, we can manage ourselves. The other 20% is bad luck and genes, environment, things that we can't control. But 80% of it, we can. And that gives us the power back, because in healthcare, we've gotten, here in the United States, it's gotten way too complicated. Everybody's very complicated. It's not just an ankle sprain anymore. People don't take care of themselves in the way that they should. Not that they would know it sometimes. And so again, it's not a judgment. It's just like, just doing what they always do, not realizing and not having enough time to be educated by their healthcare professional, or even getting in to see them. For some people, you can't even get in for a year or more.
Yeah.
So there are negatives, obviously, but we still have the best healthcare in the world. It's just that There are issues. And so when I'm working with people, I'm trying to say, you know, you have the ability to take care of yourself. But in some cases, like perimenopause, you need to see a gynecologist. Like you have to see a gynecologist. You can't do this part on your own. There are things you can do, but you still have to have a healthcare professional help guide you.
Mm.
And what I was finding was, as a healthcare professional myself, a lot of them didn't know what to tell me because my first symptom was anxiety. My very first symptom of perimenopause was anxiety. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I was having driving anxiety,
Mm.
driving over bridges. And I was like, what the heck is this? And it never an accident, came out of the blue, was this weird, strange thing. And I have a panic attack on a bridge while driving family members. And I was like, what the heck is this? Really intense. And it progressed so much so that I was like, all right, I don't know what's wrong with me. So that started the whole process. And so I really started diving in. That was about 10 years ago. I happen
Wow.
to have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so with that metabolic side of things, it can happen early, like not early, I'm not that young, but earlier and last for quite a while. And so I've been in perimenopause for almost 10 years, if not more.
Wow. Wow. So it's interesting. I mean, I think everyone who's going through has similar symptoms, maybe not all the same, but it's interesting. You're talking about the anxiety. I mean, I have a lot of it going on, but for me, I think it was the weight gain that happened first because I was feeling like myself, but it was all of a sudden I'm putting on pants and I'm like, wow, I've got a belly. Like it happened. But I will absolutely say my biggest things have been anxiety, bouts of, I call it mini depression because I can pull myself out of it, but it's like lows that are like, and I joke about it, but it's not funny, but like doing what I do, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go spread some laughter or I'm gonna do some comedy, and it's like, and I'm certainly not in the mood, and I don't usually let it keep me from doing that stuff, and I can usually get through it, and then of course I always feel better after I do it because of the connection and the laughter. But there are certainly I've lacking in motivation and productivity, and so my anxiety, and I won't go off on this too long but I mean, I never thought of that as perimenopause because years ago, it started a long time ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago. I was driving to see a friend in Albany, and I thought it was more vertigo kind of related. I made this turn, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I felt kind of dizzy. And unfortunately, I've gotten nothing from doctors over the past, well, I haven't tried super hard, but the answers I've gotten haven't been really good answers. So now I've kind of got what I thought was physiological. And because I'm nervous about it, I don't drive beyond, let's say, like the Lehigh Valley region, because I know that I know it's the anxious part that comes up, and I'll be like, gripping the wheel and feeling like I might want to pass out. So I quickly roll down the window. And I'm taking like longer routes that are like 2-lane highways versus lots of highways and things like that. And I don't know that that's tied to perimenopause, but I can relate with that because it's along with the weight gain I mentioned before with the self-esteem issue, the whole driving anxiety thing, regardless of whatever is causing it, has impacted me because I used to drive myself to like DC when I went for a workshop, and now I feel like I'm losing part of my independence, and it sucks. And so that sucks. So I'm just saying that's what I've got. Like a lot of and I'll be honest, the answers as far as the anxiety and the hormonal stuff, I haven't gotten really good answers. So I would like to see someone who actually knows what the heck they're talking about. I went for a gynecological exam 2 years ago, saw anybody who was available at Geisinger, a registered nurse, and she prescribed me some antidepressant. She said, well, this works for hot flashes. I said, well, I'm not having hot flashes really. I'm really just having hormone, like anger issues and anxiety and all this stuff. And she's like, well, try this. Maybe it'll work. I haven't taken it because I just didn't feel like it was the answer. So anyway, I won't go on, but to the point of, getting the right help, I think is difficult in our region. I don't think we have enough people who understand. And I haven't had any doctors. I've had friends who've had their, hormone levels tested and things. I haven't had any doctor even mention that. So the care is all over the place. So what I guess to like not just hear my mess and my problems, but what would you tell women besides finding someone who knows what the hell they're talking about? Some basic steps maybe, or some ways to address this. So whatever you can share with us would be great.
Sure. And that'll be general
Yes.
guidelines and guidance, so it's really like a broad stroke. So it's not in replacing or replacement for talking to your own healthcare professional. But, to be fair, I want to just add a couple of things around it so that you realize the symptoms of perimenopause are vast. Most of us talk about certain things, like I mentioned the mood issues of anxiety and depression, but brain fog, hot flashes, everybody, many people will talk about hot flashes, night sweats, sleep disturbance, migraines, genitourinary stuff, so sexual health, difficulty having sex, vaginal dryness. I mean, you name it, it goes on. All the way to some things, frozen shoulder, people are starting to relate to some of that.
Yep.
Osteoporosis. So there's a bunch of different things that you might not, you might go and ask about. The reason why I'm bringing this up, and you were pointing to it, is you might go ask about one of these symptoms and get almost a Band-Aid like fix to try to fix the symptom. Now, we can do a lot of things, but we can't recreate hormones. And so I started spending a lot of time, because I was trained during the time when the studies were done, and what they thought were giving hormone therapy to women was causing heart attacks. And so everything got shut down. In healthcare, when a study comes out, it takes them about 11 years to make a switch. The unfortunate part was 2 years after that study was actually published, the authors came back and said, okay, we need to place an addendum on that study. And what they found was it was a caveat to all of what they said for only a certain population of women. So hormone therapy actually is beneficial for some people in certain cases. I myself now am taking hormone therapy, which has been a game changer for me. I was having fatigue that was just ridiculous during the day, and I teach in the evening, so it was making it really, really difficult. I was having brain fog, so I speak for a living. That's really hard. And so I started really diving in to try to figure out, well, if I'm a nurse and I have access and understanding, because navigating healthcare is very difficult, whether you're in healthcare or not, but I speak the same language. The reality is that, yes, we need to be advocates for ourselves, because that's always the direction that I'll go, but hormone therapy for many people is extremely beneficial, extremely. So you do need to find somebody that's going to help advocate in that direction for you. We do have people in our area. You just need to know who they are. Not everybody is trained. So the Menopause Society, if you go to the Menopause Society, you can look up people in our area that are part of the Menopause Society who've taken the exams. But there are a couple people here who haven't, but they're well versed and they teach, and they're excellent people. You can always go outside to a tertiary care, so go to Philly. But to get in is really difficult. So I'm just putting that out there. But to take care of ourselves, the main areas besides the hormone therapy, because we can't recreate our own hormones, unfortunately, that would be fantastic. But waning estrogen is where this problem happens, is that when estrogen starts to drop off, a lot of different things happen. So the benign positional vertigo that you might have been having when you were driving is estrogen starting to wane, start to drop off. The anxiety that I was having. So I still have it sometimes, but I'm able to manage differently now, because mindfulness, meditation being one of the keys for me and for many people is a real benefit. The other thing is exercise of any kind. So movement, it needs to be fun though, because people will not consistently move unless they think it's fun. So finding something that you like, and you can do it in small bits. And some people say, well, I'm already dressed and I don't want to like change and get showered and all that jazz. Okay, well then get out there and do do your job. 30 minutes of moderate exercise or movement. I say movement because it doesn't have to be an exercise routine. Even walking to me is probably the best thing that you can do for yourself. And if you're outside walking, you get the benefit of nature, which kind of leads us back to, full circle what we were talking about, has an incredible benefit to it. Walking without things in your ears, your AirPods or whatever, is very helpful. You don't have to, but it really gives you a sense of being connected, and connection is really important, whether it's to one another or simply to nature. But you can still listen to a podcast like yours and take off and just go walk. But if you like to dance, if you like to swim, if you like to be with other people, which is another great way, like pickleball, there's pickleball all over the place now. It's a great thing to do. So exercise is a mood elevator, always. So we know that in many studies that exercise for 30 minutes or more is equivalent to taking your antidepressant. I would never tell anybody to stop. I'm just saying once it reaches its apex, they're about the same. So vigorous exercise for many people, that's why a lot of people like to run, get the runner's high. Well, there's a reason for that. That neurochemistry is really touching that space in the brain. And then the other thing is eating predominantly plants, which is what I teach most of the time. And I don't tell people that they have to stop eating meat. It's that what we know now, and I always reserve the right to change my mind. When new studies come out, I'll change. But the vast majority now, for the last probably 60 years, when we're talking about nutrition, and I was not trained this way. I went back and got trained further in plant-based nutrition. We know that if you eat mostly plants, the benefit to your brain and your physical body in totality is far better on all levels. So for women going through perimenopause and menopause, the scary thing is when estrogen starts to wane, it increases the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. Well, if you look at the proportion of Alzheimer's from men to women, there's more women. That's a kind of a scary thing if you start to think about, is it that we don't have enough estrogen towards the end of our lives? Is this what's going on? But remember, we went through this gap of time where we weren't actually offering hormone therapy to women.
Yeah. Heart
disease is still the leading killer of women. When estrogen goes down, the risk of heart attacks and angina, that chest pain, goes up. And our vessels start to get a little more brittle. So your blood pressure starts to go up. Weight gain starts to happen because there's less movement, right? So there's all these things that are happening, that diabetes. So our glucose control changes as estrogen starts to drop off as well. When these things are happening, we need to be able to take the best care of ourselves. So if you're eating plants, you can actually make a difference. Food is medicine in my estimation. So if you like what you're eating, if you eat mostly plants, so that's fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, and spices. The unfortunate part is animal products are highly inflammatory and come with the side effect of hormones. You're ingesting hormones. So particularly in our area, when I'm talking to people, they're like, oh, I can give up meat, but I'm not giving up dairy. Can't give up my pizza. I'm not giving up dairy. I hear that quite often.
That's what I would say.
But I can't do it. I got to eat my pizza. I get it. The reason why I went plant-based when I did was because I could not sleep. And I fully admit that when I don't sleep, I'm miserable and make everybody else around me miserable. And the reason I couldn't sleep was because I was having night sweats tremendously. And I was at a conference and I saw that they said, well, if you get rid of dairy out of your diet for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, you'll start to see symptoms change. I'm like, oh, I can do that for 2 weeks. I'll stop, eating cheese and eating dairy and all. My night sweats and hot flashes went away within 3 days. So I was sold pretty quickly because I tested myself and then I started doing research and then spent the last 10 years practicing living this way and teaching and educating people.
Can
So
I ask, can you eat the plant-based cheese? I mean, I know they make different kinds. Is that like if you're someone who like just likes the idea of cheese, is that okay? I mean, I know it might be hard to find one that tastes good, but is that would that be okay? Like healthy wise? Okay.
yeah, so I tell people, so there's a difference between plant-based, whole food plant-based, and being vegan.
Mm,
Um, Veganism is an ideology that's usually around the earth and animals, which I am too, but whole food plant-based is about health, right? And so that to me, the health usurps it. But if I'm eating healthily, so would the planet and so would the animals be taken care of, right? The problem with cheeses that are plant-based cheeses, oftentimes they're filled with oil.
mm.
And in the whole food plant-based education, we try to get people to stay away from oils as well. But there is a company called Kite Hill that Wegmans does sell. A couple other places around town do sell, and they sell like a plant-based ricotta cheese in a little container that you could use, and it's nut-based. If you have a nut allergy, you can't have it, but it's excellent. It's another way to add it in. There's a couple other companies. There's a company called Credo that has like a nacho cheese sauce. I use them. I do use them. I can make my own, but on a pinch or if I don't want to waste the time, not that it's a waste of time, but if I don't have the time because I'm super busy, then I'll use those. Yeah. You can do a pizza without cheese. My husband and I, when we're like in a pinch, we'll call Domino's up and just tell them, here, we want all the vegetables, none of the cheese. And we do that too.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like a sort of a tomato pie without the cheese, I guess, but with a bunch of vegetables on it, and it just gives you that the same sensation. But you can make your own too. Yeah.
And you mentioned, and I don't want to distract you again, but I just say you said you avoid oils. So does that mean things like, because you hear a lot about the Mediterranean diet, so olive oil, it's like all those oils too. You say you avoid those.
It's really interesting. Like, my master's thesis was around the Mediterranean diet. And so I was really heavily into the Mediterranean diet, and that's what I started educating people around. And what we found is after some time, they did some more research. So that's why I say that I reserve the right to make a change. They realized that it wasn't the olive oil that was benefiting people. It was the handful of nuts that the people that they were testing were eating every day, which reduced stroke by about 50%. There's not a drug on the planet that can do what nuts do for people.
Huh.
Most drugs, most medications, which again, I'm not anti-medication, but if you're looking at the efficacy of them, aside from statins, because statins are really beneficial in a lot of cases, but still, there's no drugs that are running at a 40 or 50% benefit rate to people. That's just plants. So if you're looking at that, if I'm working with somebody who's had major heart issues, major heart attack, they're having issues with their ejection fraction, things like that, I'm very strict with them. So no oils whatsoever. That's because that's come out of research that Dr. Esselstyn has done. He's one of the godfathers of plant-based nutrition. If I'm talking to other people who don't have a heavy negative benefit from health, like they don't have heart disease issues necessarily, almost all of us do have some to some degree, olive oil is probably the only one that I would say, yeah, it's okay. But remember, oils are basically just fat calories. They taste good. That's why we eat them, is because they taste good. So they're like a vehicle. So salad dressing, for example, it's a vehicle. You don't really need that much. And particularly if you're cooking, you don't even need oil to cook. I teach people how to do that too. I mean, you don't have to use oils to cook. If you need it, I tell people, actually put it on a measuring spoon, because people have no idea. They're just like,
That's me. I'm like, and usually it's too much. When I'm finished, I'm like, oh, I got all this excess oil. I guess I didn't need all that.
and that's the reality of it. I mean, it's not, olive oil is not an inflammatory. It's very, what we call neutral. So it's the only one that I would say, and you want a good olive oil. Locally, we have 13 Olives, and that's a great place to go. Olive oil, unfortunately, has become counterfeit. out of Italy, which is really unfortunate with a lot of foods. So it's not necessarily 100% extra virgin olive oil. So you have to find good olive oil. But again, I would say in very limited quantities, because if you're somebody who's had a heart attack or you have issues with heart disease, maybe familially, oil can become also an inflammatory marker in the body. Just like, dairy, for example, pumping most cows full of hormones so that they'll lactate. And then we're a species that drinks another species' milk. We're the only ones on the planet that do that. And so we're ingesting the hormones that are in that particular food or beverage. That affects our hormones, especially as females.
Hmm.
So there's that's why teenagers are in the midst of a change in their hormonal system, right? Acne, the more you drink or eat dairy, acne increases. In the same way, there's precocious puberty. Those have had a lot of dairy as a younger person. Precocious puberty is an issue for females. So we don't need it. We can get what we get, the vitamins and minerals we can get strictly from plants. We don't need the middleman, as I say, or the middle cow.
This is just a question. I'm just your own preference. I'm just curious. So I don't know if you're a coffee drinker. If you are, do you use because there's so many options. Years ago, I used to do soy milk and then I stopped. You got the soy, you've got the nut, you've got hemp, you've got so much. Do you have almond milk? Do you have one that you like and that you find to be healthy?
I'm the worst person to ask because people do ask me this all the time. I'm not a coffee drinker. I love the smell. I don't like the taste, so I drink tea. But from having worked with a lot of clients, they fall on the side of oat milk. And there's some oat-based creamers out there. My concern is just all the junk that they put in a creamer. But oat milk has the look and a little bit more of the body, meaning it's a little bit heavier than almond milk. Almond milk is a lot lighter. So people like the taste and the look of it. Because oftentimes when we're eating, like mindful eating, for example, the first thing you do is look at something. You see it. If you have working eyes, if your eyes are functional, it's what you see first. So eye beauty is really what we call eye hunger in the mindfulness world, is the first thing. So if the coffee doesn't look the way you want it to, a lot of people automatically are turned off before they even taste it. So so that's one of those things I would say. Try oat milk if you're not allergic and you don't have gluten issues. Oat milk is a really great substitute for cream. Cream being, high in calories, high in fat, high in hormones, which as women, I will jokingly say this, and it might sound terrible, but like going through perimenopause isn't like when I was pregnant with my kids. I knew something amazing was happening with all that hormone fluctuation at the end of it. It's like 9 months. Oh, I get a kid. After perimenopause to menopause, you're not getting anything fun, right? Except maybe more wisdom.
Yeah.
So you have to give yourself the opportunity to really be able to find things that support you, to take care of you so that you feel well. And I know coffee drinking for most people is a joy.
Yeah.
It's a joy to sit down, to feel the warmth, to have a routine around that. There's a lot of joy around how we eat and behave and take care of ourselves, and that being one of them. And so I'm not trying to be take away everybody's food choices, but if it's a benefit and you feel better and you're not bloated and you can sleep at night because you're not having night sweats, maybe try the oat milk. I usually tell people, like I just gave a lecture not too long ago here at the at the Jewish Discovery Center here in Clark Summit. And I was telling people, just try it for 2 weeks. Just see what happens. See how you feel. And it's really your body. See what your body is telling you. Pay attention to your body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Trish Dickert Nieves, who I'm sure you're familiar with. She does the somatic stuff. She spoke a couple weeks ago at Megan's at Joy World with the Abundance Life series or workshop series, and it's that whole idea of how does your body feel? How does your body feel? And one I had said one of my biggest things, and I don't mind being real about where I'm at. I overthink so much that I probably think too much and feel too little, like with what's going on with the body, because I'm too busy going, thinking about a million different things. But it's something I want to get better at, just listening to my body. Now, like I said, perimenopause is making my body say a whole bunch of stuff. It's just like, oh, that hurts. Oh, that's in, not to be TMI, but where I'm at with perimenopause, I know periods become very irregular. Well, I knew it has to be a whole year before you could say you're in menopause. And I was like, oh, I think I'm doing good. It was like a few months, 3, 4 months, nothing doing. And now these past 3 months, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, and it's back to like some of the symptoms are worse than my normal cycles where I'm like feeling more pain and I'm feeling like different pain. And I'm like, what the hell? This is not right. It's not fair. I'm like, this sucks.
Well, and you're describing that hormonal fluctuation, like I said. It's like, yeah, teenage years, okay, you could deal with that. Pregnancy, okay, but this is hard because, hey, nobody talks about it. Nobody was really talking about it until a few years ago. Family doesn't talk about it. Women aren't talking about it with one another. And I think it's better to dispel any myths that are out there so you can have the conversation. Joint pain is one of the major issues around. So is osteoporosis. And it's related again to that estrogen shift. And as you're going through it, you know, you might not want to turn towards your body. And automatically, when I was first training, body image issues are at around 99% of women have some body image issue. And that's from the age of about 16 all the way up, even until your 80s. There's something about the body that women will talk about that's negative. That's what that means. Doesn't mean clinically that you have an eating disorder or disordered eating. However, that stems out of that. Yet, when I'm teaching mindfulness-based stress reduction, which has some similarities to somatic movement, we're turning toward our bodies for understanding and wisdom, because the body is always in the present moment. Our minds are always, we're up in our heads. It's always in the past. It's always in the future. If you're thinking about the past a lot, it increases that depressive, melancholy way of being. If you're always in the future, worry thinking into the future, it's got that more of that anxiety kind of driven, although we bounce back and forth. But the body's always in the present moment. And the beauty of that is we can come back to it with practice. That's what I teach people. Try to come back. We don't have to stay there. You don't have to sit there and wallow. But our emotion is held in our body, which is thoughts that are manifested in the body. And thoughts are manifested in the body. If you're scared and someone comes up behind you and scares you the crap out of you, what does the body do? The body naturally jumps, or you get the hair that rises up on the back of your neck, you get tight. That's a manifestation of fear in the body. Sadness, you might start to cry, you might have a heaviness in the chest. That's the manifestation in the body. Well, what happens is most of us spend a lot of time up in our head. We're always thinking about things, trying to resolve or fix or plan from our head. We're not paying attention to the subtleties of the body until something major happens. You break something or you get sick. And that's when it's really right in your face.
Yeah.
This gives us some understanding and a place to start from.
Yeah. I want to say too, and this will be the last thing of mine that I want to share because I don't want to keep going off on, but I just find it, you mentioned the joints and also the amazing amount of things that are impacted by estrogen. I'm learning, I'll tell you, it's making me like learn more because again, with the whole driving anxiety, a few weeks ago, I was driving home and my eyes for some reason had started to get really irritated too. And I was getting increased like not, I was almost feeling nauseous a little bit with driving. I thought, well, this is worse than usual. And my eyes just were so irritated. And then I was reading about how the amount of estrogen and how it affects the pressure behind the eyes. And I'm like, dear Lord, I had no clue this estrogen thing is affecting every damn thing in the body.
Yeah, I mean, the body to me is so amazing. It's why, I've always been both into science and the contemplative side. So I was raised in in a religious faith, and I was Catholic, raised as a Catholic. So I had this balance between the two things of the spiritual religious side of me and then the science side. So I'm always curious about both. And so the understanding that we can help take care of ourselves and that there's something that's like greater than we are, because it would be really easy if we just said, oh yeah, okay, I need more estrogen, and we were able to do it ourselves. We're not. Our bodies eventually are going to give way. None of us are getting out off this planet alive, and so things are going to happen over time, right? Estrogen being one of those things. And it does affect not only the pressure, but some people talk about, I was having this too, it dries out the body. Everything gets dry. The skin on the body, vaginal moisture, but also the eyes. And so you get this gritty, sandy feeling in the eyes, and it changes the pressure, which means that it's also going to change what you're visually seeing. And so there's sometimes a sense of dizziness. Some people get migraines from that as well, and migraines are another one of the issues during perimenopause. Some people who've never had migraines get migraines. So there's so many different things, and I'm not trying to blame everything on low estrogen, but if you're noticing these things around this time and your menstrual cycle is changing and it starts to stop and then it comes back and you're having breakthrough bleeding, you can probably bet that your body is trying to tell you something and that there are things that are going hand in hand. And everybody's symptoms are different. You might have low libido and sleep disturbance and urgency to pee. That's always a fun one.
Mm.
And then notice that you're having all sorts of joint pain. Now, granted, if you live where we live and you're walking in the forest or whatever, you should get a Lyme's titer too. I'm not suggesting it's just estrogen. However, if you're keeping track and you start to notice a compilation of symptoms, instead of trying to like play whack-a-mole, you might want to, if you're female and at this age, anywhere between 35 and 60, you might want to go talk to your OBGYN and have the conversation. What's interesting is not all blood work is going to determine either. Lots of times it's a combination of things. What's happening symptomatically with you and the hormones. That, being in healthcare and also having polycystic ovarian syndrome, I was always tracking my hormones because I had to. It was part of the process just to make sure everything was going okay. So for me, I had more understanding, but still, I don't sit there and read them. That's not my expertise. But like I said, having the ability to have someone aid you, as well as then having proper sleep hygiene. Tendency for people to say, oh, I'm not sleeping well, so I'm going to have a drink of wine. Sorry, I know that's part of your the podcast.
It's okay. Be real.
But like, right, if you drink, it's going to put you to sleep. But what happens is it causes sleep disturbances in the middle of the night. So people are waking up, then there's some anxiety, then they can't get back to sleep. They wake up, they're feeling groggy. There's all sorts of things that happen. So sleep is it's the base pillar for all mental wellness and physical wellness is sleep. You want it to be dark as possible. You want it to be cold. So you want your core to actually hold all the blood flow in the major organs. So your hands and feet might get cold. So you want to be able to cover yourself. Whether it's winter or summer, you want it to be cold. 68 or below, I'm a fan of 65. That's what most research has shown. Going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time, every single day, trying not to play catch up, stopping caffeine at a certain time in the day. For most people, It's between the hours of 1 and 2 in the afternoon, but you can figure that out for yourself because caffeine has a half-life. I'm a fan of caffeine for many reasons. One of the most studied substances on the planet. It's beneficial in a lot of ways. But if you're somebody who notices after you drink 2 cups, you're having heart palpitations, you might want to back off on that and finish earlier because it'll help with your sleep. But if you're having vasomotor stuff, hot flashes and night sweats and things like that, you want to get the best sleep you can, but then you also want to talk to your healthcare professional and OBGYN to maybe talk to them about what can you do to actually alleviate that. I started on hormone therapy myself because of that, because I wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be miserable.
Yeah, none of us do. Especially you're not sleeping, you got the brain fog, you got all kinds of stuff going on. That does not make for a good day. Not at
No,
all.
no.
Well, I have to say, Lisa, I'll have to have you back because there's so many things I want to talk to you about. And here we are, and it's almost an hour. And I mean, honestly, because I think it's fascinating. And I think so many women love this, would love to hear this conversation and are having this conversation. I mean, I'm having this conversation about perimenopause with so many different women in my life. And I think it is important that we are finally talking about it because, my mom just turned 80, and back in their day, I know they didn't talk about, and we didn't talk about it in my household, nothing about that whole thing. We didn't even talk. I didn't even get a talk about, menstruation. I've never had any of those talks. So I'm glad we're talking more about it now. That's why I'm happy to talk about it in my comedy and everything else, because women need to know that there's people out there, women going through what they're going through, and being able to share some things, even if it's just like, well, here's what I've done. You might want to ask your doctor, or maybe try this, just so that we can feel connected, we can feel comforted, and things like that are so important. So I know, like I said, I know I could go on with you, but I would like to, in as we start to wrap up, and I should mention to anyone listening, because this is airing on Thursday, tomorrow, if you're listening on the day it airs, the next day, Friday, June 20th, Lisa will actually be the speaker for this week's event at Megan Alpert's place, Joy World in downtown Scranton. So if you are a woman in the area and you want to hear more from Lisa, Lisa's going to be talking because Megan's hosting this on all the pillars of wealth. And there was financial was the first week. Last week was time wealth and social wealth. Rose Nogan spoke. I spoke last week about humor and how laughter connects us. And so this Friday, June 20th, will be Lisa. It will also be Pat Barnes, who is someone who's legendary in the area for exercise and movement. But as Lisa made the great point, it doesn't have to be thinking of the leotard or, well, we don't use leotards anymore, but you know what I mean? I'm sorry, I'm showing my 70s and 80s, but it doesn't have to be the certain workout class or the certain workout machines at Planet Fitness or wherever you go. It's about movement, and that's something that Pat will address. So that's Friday, June 20th, 12:30 p.m., and you just need to register. There's no cost. And Lisa will be one of the presenters. But as we start to wrap up, I wanted to hear a little bit more from you about mindfulness, because I don't think we had a chance to really talk as much about that. Because when I hear mindfulness, I'm probably going not wrong direction, but I'm just thinking meditation. But I'm sure it encompasses more than that.
Yeah, so mindfulness meditation itself is a type of meditation, which is what I teach. So it is meditation. However, that's the formal side of it. And then mindfulness itself is what you would then carry, let's say, off the cushion or off the chair. So when I'm teaching, everybody's sitting in chairs, but it's the underpinnings, the formal way of learning. And then from there, I'm not going to say skills because it's not skills. Awareness is always with us. It's learning to be able to pay attention in a way that is curious and kind. So there's a self-compassion component to mindfulness that is really beneficial. Most of us are really kind to others and compassionate to others, but not so much to ourselves. And so learning what thoughts, what emotions and physical sensations are present from moment to moment aid us so that we're less reactive and more responsive. Reactivity is when we're stressed to the max, and so we're highly reactive. Stress hormones are released, flood the brain and body, but chronically that causes wear and tear, both emotionally and mentally and physically. So shifting from that reactive way of being, an impulsive way of being, to being more responsive. What is it like when, for example, something happens in life, how do you meet that challenge? You have a choice. And in mindfulness, we start to learn how do we better take care of ourselves in a way that's really beneficial, that's healthy. So it's a healing process and healing practice. The meditation side of it is basically the underpinning. So you learn how to do that. The 8-week intensive course actually is me teaching people how to begin to meditate. And then from there, how do you carry this into your everyday life? How does this benefit you at work, in communication with those that you love and know, for yourself, for sure? So what does that look like? So mindfulness is really a lived practice all the time. The meditation is the part that helps you to get there. So I hope that makes some sense. I wanted to make sense.
Yeah, it does. And is it about also being, could we say intentional, like a little bit more, or is that not the same? Because that's one thing I've been thinking myself that I want to work on with me, because it in every area of my life, it's like, what am I choosing to eat? Being more intentional, like take a look at it and thinking more about what my choices are instead of just going along with what I've been doing.
Yeah, and actually, you're pointing to the what we call the working definition of mindfulness, which is the awareness that arises when we pay attention on purpose, so that intentionality in the present moment, so what's happening right here and now, with kindness and curiosity. So that's the working definition where we're paying attention. There's an awareness that does arise. You become aware of your surroundings and what's happening in your internal landscape. Like I said, thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations. But it's intentional. And we bring this intentionality to that moment so that we have a better sense of, yeah, like if you're going to choose from a menu, oftentimes what happens is if you're tired, you look at a menu, you're usually going to pick the thing that is comfort because it's habit pattern. That's what reactivity is, it's habit pattern. Mm. Can we start to recognize our own habit patterns and learn from them and perhaps respond differently? And that's what mindfulness does, whether you're eating or you're dealing with a situation with a family member or your own health. Mindfulness is really a broad way, but it's a lived way. And if for a lot of people, if they don't like the term mindfulness, I'll just say it's awareness. It's an awareness practice. Paying attention, being aware. And awareness is always around us. We just oftentimes, like we're blinking, we close our eyes, we forget, we have to wake back up again and awaken to the life that we're living in that moment.
Yeah.
So, and the intentionality around that, especially with mindfulness meditation and mindfulness in general, is how. What's the how? Is it kind? Are you trustful of yourself? Are you accepting of what's here right now? Not accepting something that's unjust, but accepting the reality of what it is. Because from that reality, then you can make a really wise decision. The non-judgmental. There's many different ways of intentionality around, we call them the attitudes of mindfulness. There are 9 of them: gratitude, generosity, and so forth.
So when you're just and I get that sounds great. I'm going to ask you one more question to say, to back up to the meditation part. So when you're going through that with folks, and I mean, I know we're all, for the most part, familiar with meditation, and a lot of folks, like myself included, if you're an overthinker, it's hard to quiet your mind and do that. But, and I know you can get benefits from even just a few minutes. And I've done it where it's like breathing and holding and letting go of different things. Are you, when you're doing it to prepare someone for mindfulness, is there more than just the breathing? Is there maybe trying to get people to start to think about different aspects of their life while they're like breathing in and out, or not? Or is it not like that to get you to prepare for that intentionality in different areas of your life?
Yeah, that's interesting. So can I clarify something? So,
yeah, please.
Yeah, in mindfulness meditation, the type of meditation that I train to teach, we're not trying to quiet our minds. We're going to let our minds do what they do, because our minds are always thinking. It's its job to think, the mind. If for me to ask you to stop thinking, that would be like me asking you just make your heart stop beating or your lungs stop breathing. Your mind's job is to think. What we're learning to do is to become aware of it and just notice thinking in general without going down the rabbit hole of the story of the thought. Just simply become aware of thinking, just like you're aware of your own breathing. And so I'm guiding people in mindfulness meditation for a period of time, and then we're doing a check-in after that. From that check-in, that's when they have the capacity of taking this into your daily life. When you're brushing your teeth, or when you're walking your dog, or when you're talking to your kids, or you're talking to a friend, it starts to become part of your everyday life because it's a way of being. And so during practice, yeah, you'll hear me guide about the breath, but the breath for some people, especially if you're somebody who has some anxiety, breath is not a happy place because most people start to have hyperventilating, or they know their chest, especially if they're anxious. So in mindfulness meditation, we also use sound as an anchor, or we use our physical sensations like hands or feet. Oftentimes are very helpful for people. The breath is always there. It's one of the other anchors that we use, those 3 anchors. But during a session, I'm guiding, and it could be around many things. It could be around loving kindness. It could be around self-compassion. It could simply be around attending to what's happening right in that moment, using our senses. So sight, sound, taste, smell, physical sensations, thinking being one of them. That's specific to a formal practice. And so I'm guiding and I'm leading that, but I'm practicing along with everybody too. And then after that, we do a check-in, and the check-in is really to notice, what were you aware of? Was the mind trailing off 1,000 times? Were you able to bring it back to your anchor with kindness? Or were you beating yourself up, trying to yank it back, saying, I'm supposed to be paying attention to my breath? Or can you be okay with like, oh yeah, there goes my mind again? Well, yeah. How often does it happen in everyday life? All the time. So we start to learn how to settle, recognizing that these things are happening around us and within us, and start to learn how to relate differently to any challenge, whether it's mind wandering or knee pain or grief. How do we meet ourselves with this intentional, kind way? And it builds stability. You do cultivate stability. You learn over time. So the more you practice, the more you begin to heal, become whole, and have a lot of stability and wisdom arise from that.
Yeah. That sounds, and I get it. That sounds great. And I could see how, again, with the practice, how it can become such a part of your life. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much because honestly, like I said, I could want to dive into so many avenue or follow so many paths here because there's so many important things and interesting things we could talk about. I even remember the last time I did get to see you speak, someone asked you about vitamins. That was another thing I took away from because I remember your take on vitamins, and I'm like, I think if I recall, you said B12 was important. That was one you were okay with, if I recall. So I remember that too because there's so many things people ask, or are confused about, I should say, like because we can read so much online. And vitamins is one of those. It's like, oh my gosh, for years you heard that, oh, you're just peeing out what you don't need and it's not helpful. And now I'm taking I take a B12, I take a calcium, I take a zinc, I take a vitamin C. And I'm like, someone said to me, why don't you just take a multivitamin? I'm like, yeah, I don't believe in them, but now I'm taking like 8 other things. Like that makes sense, right? I mean, economically, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's sometimes I'm having a hard time swallowing bigger pills. I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's really interesting because I do a lot of what I do is a broad spectrum of health. So yeah, people will ask me the nutritional side of things, and then they'll ask me about healthcare, or then they'll ask me about any kind of mindfulness and benefit in that regard. But I love it, and so I'm a lifelong learner. So I appreciate you having me on and I'm happy to talk about any of the aspects in areas that I feel are really important, especially like we did today. I mean, perimenopause and having that discussion is so important. But yeah, vitamins is a biggie. I'm cool with vitamin D too, because we live in an area where we don't get enough of that, and B12. The rest of it, not so much. I mean, we really don't need it. If you eat a varied diet, if you're eating a lot of different foods, different colors and things like that, you're going to get it from your food. If you're not, multivite is okay, just not one with iron. We don't want iron in there.
Really? Okay.
Especially for women. Yeah. Unless you have like an anemia thing, we don't want that. Protect our hearts. So yeah.
Oh, I did not realize that because again, I'll make this short, but I used to donate blood, and I noticed all of a sudden looking. I love their app that would show, what my blood pressure was, what my hemoglobin rate was, and it was actually at Megan's last year in September. I donated, and I was like, "Huh, this is interesting." Like 4 times in a row, donations, the hemoglobin level was slightly decreasing
Mm.
each time. And then when I donated that day, it was lower. So that was like 5 times. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I went, got my blood work, and sure enough, my everything that was tied to red blood cell production was below normal. Not
Mm.
terribly below, but below. And the platelets was above, but not terribly above, just slightly above. So I was concerned, and that started on my, talking to my doctor, and she's like, well, and I'm not running anymore because I was having a harder time breathing running, and my legs were feeling heavy, and I thought it was tied to maybe losing iron, to low iron. And she said, no, this amount isn't so low that it should cause those symptoms. And that has sent me on these variety of things I've had, like EKGs and stress tests, and metabolic stress tests. Nothing is showing anything, but what I want to come back to is I had said to her, should I be taking iron? And I started taking just a supplement that I had, and she said, well, it can be really hard on the stomach. I wouldn't, I could prescribe it if it gets worse, but be careful, it's hard on the stomach. So I occasionally take iron, but it has such a horrible taste. And I was taking it with vitamin C because I know I don't take it with coffee because the caffeine, I guess, does not help with the absorption where vitamin C does. But I'm only hit or miss with it, but I didn't realize it had an impact on heart health.
Yeah, it can. So I usually tell people like, but if you actually truly have anemia, then you definitely would need iron. I just usually tell people in a broad spectrum, you don't need it unless you do show up with something where like anemia like that. Yeah, runners tend to also have a little bit lower, for sure, because it just from the heel striking, and women, if you're still menstruating, you're going to have at times lower. If it's progressive, consistent, could be a couple different things, which of course they're going to follow. But yeah, vitamins are one of those things where we go back and forth all the time in the nutritional science world. However, in reality, what do we really need? If you're eating a varied diet, really vitamin D and B12 are the two that you need for sure. Yeah, vitamin C, you can take vitamin C. You're going to pee that one out. That's a water soluble one, but you'll get what you need. But if you're eating things that are bright, colorful, red peppers have one of the highest levels of vitamin C. So if you
Hmm.
if you like red peppers and you're ingesting them, that's like a great. All the greens, any kind of greens, you're gonna get berries of all kinds. So yeah, if you eat broadly, you're gonna get what you need. It just if you're like on the standard American diet, which is like terrible, we call that
Yeah.
sad standard American diet, sad, and then sad crap because C is like calorie rich and processed. So sad crap is the American diet. You're probably not getting what you need. So sometimes you might have to supplement, but unfortunately, a lot of things are not regulated. And, I again won't go down that except to say that with the new administration, without the FDA and USDA being a part of things to do research, I use an independent lab to check things because they do testing. But supplements and vitamins are not regulated. So you got to be cautious with what you take in because it could be loaded with contaminants too. Nature's bounty, nature's made, that kind of thing. They're all good. They actually follow, and they're the ones that I usually recommend to people. You go to CVS or Walgreens, whatever. You don't have to go any place or spend too much money. That's the other thing because I I believe in health and well-being. The wellness industry as a whole is like something like $60 trillion right now, making about that. Most of that is just gimmick,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So,
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I will wrap here because I was going to say I want to launch into a whole new discussion that could be another hour because as we were talking, I was thinking that very same thing because with these supplements, and I've looked at things for weight loss, even like that thing that starts with a B, Berber, or whatever the heck it is. There's so many things. I sat one, or not sat, I was actually, thankfully, I was moving. I was on a treadmill in Planet Fitness. I think it was last winter, and I got sucked into a video on YouTube about stuck poop. And of course, they were going to sell me all this because I was like, "Ooh, this is interesting." And it was this woman who I don't know where she had been in Africa. She was here, she was there. And of course, it comes down to she wanted to sell a supplement that had that Berber, whatever, and a whole bunch of other things in it. And of course, you could get it from her website for like $55 a month or whatever. And it's like to that end, we could easily spend so much money. And I mean, I just from one of the things I tell you, I take. And then after my eyes hurt a few weeks ago, I bought Ocuvite. Now I haven't opened them because I just haven't started taking them. But do I need Ocuvite? I don't know for my eyes if I really need that. But you could easily spend so much money on things, and to your point, they're not regulated. We don't know if they're even going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver, or if they'll possibly even be harmful, not to mention the waste of money.
Well, think about it. I mean, for your eyes, you could have some carrots and some broccoli, but there's no big carrot or big broccoli out there doing doing advertising. And literally, it's cheaper with no side effects. And that's why plants, to me, eating more plants is food is medicine, right? No side effects, it's cheaper, and you're going to get the benefit because we know that if you try to pull a vitamin out most of the times, try to pull a vitamin out of the food itself, that particular vitamin doesn't have the same benefit because we call it synergistic effect of food. It's the combination of all of the chemistry that's in broccoli, for example, that you're getting the benefit from. Some things more than others, right? So the cruciferous side of broccoli is anti-carcinogenic. That's why we try to get people to eat broccoli, asparagus, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, things like that have a really high component. But if you try to take it out, the efficacy drops, and we find that it's not really beneficial. That's why I think, again, that goes back to the other side of who I am. It's like there's something greater than who we are. We as human beings think we can, navigate and fix things and construct things. But if you're looking at broccoli or you're looking at carrots, the things for your eyes, you're orally eating them and you're getting the benefit from it. Yeah, are our eyes eventually going to break down at some point? Of course they are. But if it's like scratchy eyes and, there's sandy feeling and your eyes are doing weird things, you might just have to add a little bit of like eye drops and then eat some food. And shockingly, it's like, oh, that feels better, looks better, and seems better for me.
Yeah.
Less side effects, cheaper, more benefit. So it's like, all right, well, instead of going and buying all of these different supplements, and if it were that easy, I don't know, I think that everybody would be doing it.
Yeah.
I would probably if I made something up, I'd probably make $1 billion, but that's not who I am. I'd rather just educate people to get healthier because they have it at ther fingertips, really, and within their own bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will wrap on that note because I'm like, oh man, there's so many things I want to ask her about, but I'll have to have you back another time. And for folks women who live in northeastern Pennsylvania, if you are somewhat close to Scranton and you have time this Friday at 12:30, like I said, we will be there at Joy World, and Lisa will be speaking, and Pat Barnes as well. So it's been a great series so far. This week will be the third in four weeks. And then the last week, which is June 27th, will be focused on spirituality. So you can check that out on Facebook. I've been posting a lot about it, but I'll also put some information in the show notes here. And Lisa, as we wrap up, and you can send me this too so that I can have it in the show notes, if someone does want to learn about your mindfulness classes or how they can maybe become a client, or I don't know if that's the right word, but learn coaching. And again, I don't want to, use different words here, but how is the best place to reach out to you, or a website, or what's the best way to reach you?
The easiest way to reach me is through my website. And my number is on there anyway, so they can call me there, but to reach out to the website is a little long, but I'll tell you it's www.eatbreathemove.live.com. So
okay.
It's all the components. Thank you so much for having me on. It was such a fun conversation.
Good. I'm telling you, I enjoyed it. Again, I could ask you so many questions, and I know a lot, but a lot of women, because I know I'll talk to friends and we're like, oh my God, you too? So I know a lot of women can relate to this. Again, not that we're all the same, but there's so many different components, and we all certainly have the capacity, as you're saying, to control or, make choices about so much that we can choose for our health. So I think that's important. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I think it's been a great conversation. I will put Lisa's website in the show notes so you can link from there. If we don't get to see you this Friday, be sure to look Lisa up at her website and learn more. And as always, I want to thank you for listening. And next week, hopefully, if I get the schedule straightened out, I should be having a conversation about affordable housing in Scranton, the concerns, the possibilities, things like that of that nature. And I will continue to schedule, as I say each week, too. If you are someone who is interested in being on the podcast, or if you know a woman that you're like, oh my gosh, she's fantastic, she's always volunteering, or she just climbed a mountain, or, just something to share so that listeners can be informed, inspired, and entertained, please reach out. And if you like this kind of conversation, having a platform for women to be able to share information and empower other women, then reach out and let me know if you'd like to be a podcast sponsor. As I've been saying, it's cheaper than if you buy a coffee a day for a month. It's the packages are cheaper than that. So if you'd like to support this kind of content, reach out to me and let me know. So as I say each week, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.